Hey guys, Bill Spadea here. Welcome to our new streaming show, Common Ground. As you know, not long ago, just a couple of weeks, we were at the Texas border talking about what is really going on our border between Texas and Mexico. And I have to tell you what we saw, what we learned from our firsthand experience. The problem is far worse than anyone is talking about. We just had recent news about a Hezbollah terrorist coming through the border and then being released somewhere into our country. And he admitted that that's who he was. And when you think about the tens of thousands who are coming across in a week or 2 week period, literally talking about 270,000 illegal migrants coming over every single month. It is a completely unsustainable crisis. We have to do something about it. And I thought, let's go to the experts. And I wanted to bring in some of the folks that were so helpful with us, touring us around the southern border and giving us the firsthand experience that you need. Guys, the news, the government, they are not being honest with you. I want to bring in our new friends from the Texas Public Policy Institute, Josh Trevino and Melissa Ford. Guys, welcome to Common Ground. How you guys doing?
Hey, Bill.
Hey, Bill. Thanks for having us on. Doing good. How are you?
Really doing great. Thank you. Let's just jump right in, Josh. When we first got there to the border, I mean, we started from that very first dinner discussing what the crisis was. Just in short, what if you can translate for the folks watching? What do you think they will see, and what are they not being told when they actually get there on the ground?
Well, people who come to the border, and thank you, Bill, for coming, because it makes a difference, not just to us in Texas, but to the rest of the country. But people who actually go to the border see that what's happening there has to be described with two words: invasion and war. It is a militarized situation, and we have to be clear, it's not us doing the militarizing, it's the cartels who have a substantive military force at their command. It is a situation where there is an invasion underway. Under the constitutional definition, invasion requires entry plus enmity, and we've got both happening at the border. And it's a crisis, and it deserves all the attention it gets and more.
So talk about enmity. You know, when you talk about the fact that the migrant themselves, the one person looking for the job, looking for a better life, that's not an invader. And Melissa, you were on the radio show the other day. You had just a great explanation of that we need to change the dialogue when it comes to political leaders in particular who are talking about this, because right away someone says invasion and the left-wing media will show pictures of migrant mothers and kids. That's not what we mean.
Exactly. And I'll jump in here. Enmity is an intent by an invader to basically subvert or overthrow lawful sovereignty. So entry alone, which is maybe a migrant coming here to look for work or coming here for a job or just a better life, is not enough to constitute an invasion. So are lawmakers incorrect when they assert that there's an invasion underway at the southern border? No, they're not. There is an invasion underway, but it's not an invasion by migrants. It's an invasion by the cartels.
Let's talk about that, Josh, the cartels. One of the things that we saw as Renee walked us through those parts of the ranch where you saw the drop points, and we found the baby diapers and the clothes. I mean, some heartbreaking stuff that you see. Yeah. But across the river, we saw this when we were in Laredo, that you could see the cartel military trucks and 50 caliber machine guns. So one of the things that I brought back was that the border is in fact militarized, just not by the American side. It's militarized on the other side. How extensive is the cartel operation, and how dangerous is it for Americans?
The cartel operation extends across 100% of the border. We have to understand that. There's no section of the border that is uncontrolled by the cartels. And look, Bill, when you and I and the team were out on the river, on the Rio Grande outside of Reynosa, we saw that. Nobody on the American side for most of it, but constantly somebody on the Mexican side watching us, watching them. And that's the depth and the breadth of the control that they have. The cartel problem is huge. We have to understand, former U.S. ambassador to Mexico under Trump, Chris Landau, said that the cartels control 35 to 40% of Mexican territory. And it's probably an underestimate. But these are entities that have nation state capabilities. They have robust military capacities. They exhibit all the characteristics of a defined state. And we need to start understanding them as such and treating them as such.
Let's talk about the violence for a moment. One of the places that we saw, there were actual bullet holes from gunfire coming from across from Mexican territory, where clearly the Mexican government not in control. But as I understood, and my takeaway, one or both of you can explain this: 3 Mexican cartels fighting for superiority, and then we now know there's a Chinese cartel operating. Give us a sense of what's happening in terms of the fentanyl coming over, the arms trafficking, and the human trafficking.
There's more than one cartel organization out there. In the area that we were, there's really 3 major cartels: the Cartel del Golfo, Cartel del Noreste, and the Zetas. And then you throw in the existence of the Chinese snakeheads and the triads, which are criminal organizations of their own who manufacture fentanyl precursors. But there's one point that I think is important to emphasize. Many elements of the Mexican state themselves are also involved in trafficking and cartels. So when you see Mexican army, Mexican military out there, for example, you're frequently also seeing trafficking activities and a trafficking organization at work. There really are very few good guys on the south side of the Rio Grande.
Let's talk about that. That one of the things that we pointed out and was pointed out to us, and I know Senator Ted Cruz made a whole issue with this during some congressional hearings, that people who are coming across, no migrant is getting across that southern border into Texas that is not flagged by a cartel. And if they don't pay the tax, well, there's a death tax that comes where literally you could be killed. So I think it's important for everyone to understand that the 2 groups, and I want to ask you both. One, how is it that you get these families that are coming across, and what burden is on these migrant families? Because many of them are truly victims of the cartel themselves, where they're going to end up being essentially indentured servants or slaves to these cartels, facing death if they don't abide. And then second part, let's talk about the 13,000 unaccompanied minors that came across in that month when we were just talking about the toll on kids. But first, the families. What's the real scenario? What's happening? Melissa?
Yeah, I'll start. So we often talk about how much the federal government's failure to secure the border and do something about the humanitarian crisis at the border is hurting Americans, right? We saw it on this side of the border when we were on the border trip, but it's not often talked about how much it hurts the migrant families too, right? There seems to be this constant misconception that border barriers or border security are inhumane. We saw this a lot with the buoy barriers, and then we just hear about it all the time whenever we see fencing or a wall. So some people might believe that, but no one on the border that's seeing what's happening believes that, right? So border infrastructure is actually meant to dissuade migrants from attempting to dangerously cross the Rio Grande and protect migrants from being pushed into the grasp of the cartels. It's for their sake, and it removes a means for cartels to exploit migrant families and can actually shield them from being subjected to abuse and inhumane treatment by cartels.
So the reality is that we've created a magnet for people to come here, and it's not that they don't want to come for a better life. It's that the go-between, the vehicle, is the cartel. So they're not just getting across the river and, hey, I'm here, I'm in America, great, put me on a bus and send me to Chicago. They're owned by a cartel operation, and their life is owned by them.
100% of the border.
Now, when you say that, I mean, we're talking about Texas, we're talking about New Mexico, we're talking about Arizona, up in California. If there are migrants crossing, they are owned by a particular cartel.
They're all trafficked. Yeah, no, that's exactly right. And look, the crossing the border is not the end of the nightmare for them. Once they're in the clutches of these trafficking organizations, women, children, men, everybody, they're trafficked to various points in the United States, and then they're held essentially. Ransom is not too strong a word, but they've got to send money back. For their either to pay off a phony debt or for the welfare of their family members back home who will be hurt or killed if they fail to do it. And so, think of it as an evil subscription model, really, that these people are trapped in. And the flow in people is so huge that it rivals the size of the drug market itself. And so we are talking billions of dollars going south from these individuals who are themselves victims of trafficking organizations.
What's the top mistake our policymakers are making right now on the American side?
Not building the wall. That simple.
Yeah, that simple. What about going after the cartels on Mexican territory? We've talked about this from a policy standpoint. Even President Joe Biden, when he was in the Senate 35 years ago, talked about hitting the cartels where they are. I can't imagine any American today looking at this human crisis that is unfolding would not want to go and proactively hit the cartels where they're building their bases. I was shocked. Military bases, they had trucks coming in and out, firing ranges. Unreal.
Yeah. Look, all options have to be on the table at this point. And in candor, whatever one's views are on American national security commitments abroad, it is unacceptable and insane and frankly unconstitutional that the United States Armed Forces are committed in almost every corner of the world except our own border. What is our military for? What is our Defense Department for, if not to defend American homes, communities, and American citizens? And its failure to do that is discrediting and delegitimizing in ways that go far beyond the border crisis.
Last point, Melissa, if you just weigh in, one of the things that we saw when we were in McAllen is that there were, out of a 6-week period, because I had mentioned the Hezbollah terrorists, that was just a one-off, recently in the news a couple of days ago, but over a 6-week period that they were tracking illegals coming through, 2,000 every day, 7 out of 10 were Chinese military-aged men.
Yeah, that's very concerning, Bill. And the very scary thing about that is that's just what is being seen. It doesn't include the gotaways. It doesn't include all the people that are getting through undetected. And to be honest, people that really don't want to be caught will find a way to get through undetected. I think I told you this when we were at the border, but we're seeing an insane amount of names of people that have appeared on the terrorist watch list who have been apprehended trying to cross the U.S.-Mexico border between ports of entry. And these are just people that are caught. Last year in fiscal year 2023, we saw in just that year more than the 6 years combined. It was a 72% increase from the year before. And so they're just staggering numbers. A lot of people, we have no idea who's coming in just because our border is open and they're being told that the border is open. And so it's an incredibly concerning thing to see.
Josh, last point. I just want to loop back to what I said earlier about the 13,000 kids that were unaccompanied minors. I don't remember if that was I think it was in a 1-week period or whatever that number was. It was a frightening number. What tends to happen to these children as they come across?
Nothing good. The kids maybe have the greatest nightmare of all. There are markets in children, literal markets in children, where those wishing to cross and to be apprehended or be perceived as members of family units can buy a child. There's no other way to put it, and cross the river with that child and hope to get preferential treatment from federal authorities on the north side. But, we've heard plenty of stories of kids being left to die, kids discarded in the brush, kids being left to die literally in the middle of the river. We've talked with individuals who've seen that. So and these children, if they make it through, they're not kept by those who purchase them. They're either dumped in a foster system, and that's a best case outcome, which is, we know is not a good case at all. Or they're sold into the sex trade. And it is monstrous what happens to these kids. The best thing we can do for them is shut the traffic down.
Yeah. Build the wall, close the border. Josh, always good to see you. Thank you very much. Melissa, thank you. Appreciate you guys, and I appreciate what you're doing. We will certainly loop back around and hopefully take our second pass at seeing this firsthand.
Thank you, Bill.
Thanks, Bill.
All right, guys, now a word from our sponsors. Obviously, to put on great broadcasting and give you the information that you need, we got to pay the bills. I want you to hear from Acting Networks.
Arthur loves to tell his kids about the good old days. Sledding in Fort Mott, summers at the shore, and when you walked down the street, everyone knew your name. Even the people at the store knew you. Arthur tells his kids that small business made this country great. So what does Arthur do when his own business is vandalized? Well, he ignores the lessons he teaches his kids and signs up for a monthly video surveillance subscription with one of the big guys, where when he needs support, he'll just be an anonymous customer amongst thousands. We're Acting Networks. We're definitely not one of the big guys, but we offer the same quality services. Unlike the big guys, we'll know who you are when you call, because we're your neighbors. Ask yourself a question. What would happen if everyone acted like Arthur did? Small businesses would disappear one by one, until maybe even Arthur's business was gone. Then what will your children have to tell about the good old days when they're older? Think local. Think Acteon. Learn more today.
I want to thank Acteon Networks and welcome you back to our new streaming show, Common Ground, brought to you by some great sponsors and, of course, sponsored by New Jersey 101.5 FM, where you'll listen to me every morning, every weekday morning, 6 to 10 a.m. Okay, I want to get a little more specific to what we saw on the border and bring in our new friend, Joe Ramirez. Now, Joe is the investigator for the Webb County Sheriff's Department, and he joins me now. Joe, thank you for taking the time to speak to me today. Let me ask you, when we got there, and I want to take us back to that park where there was the crossing, and I want you to tell the story of what happened. Here you are in basically an armored vehicle, this Kevlar coated vehicle, and the alarm went off. One of our common sense folks, Elizabeth, went back to the truck and tried to open the door, and the alarm was off. But an amazing thing happened. People came out of the woodwork, and one of the cars sped off. Can you just explain the cartel activity on our side of the border?
Well, that day that happened with the alarm, that was pretty much giving, the counter surveillance information that law enforcement was in the area. Of course, the rep that we were in with the county attorney's office, that's the reason that vehicle was donated to us to look mean, but also to provide us some, protection of anything. As soon as that alarm went off, and it's happened before numerous times where we worked the border, scouts, people just looking at, law enforcement activity around the area, BP, Border Patrol is sitting there. You have people crossing over, but as soon as alarms go off, sirens go off, they think that, somebody's chasing that group of people that are coming by. So that vehicle that showed up was, somebody that's cartel related came and tried to pick up the stragglers or try to pick up anybody that was crossing over.
So in your opinion now, here you are, you are the lead investigator, the Webb County Attorney's Office, and you are on the front line. People are crossing into your town, into your county. It's happening on a daily basis. And when we were touring and you showed us some of the entry points, we saw one Border Patrol truck and then, 100 yards away, another one. But between us and the two Border Patrol agents, that was it for what we could see as far as our eyes could see. What's this situation on the border, and what does it mean to folks that live in these border towns? What's been happening in terms of crime, et cetera?
Crime has been going up. We have had a big influx of thefts, break-ins in homes, people coming in from other countries. That I'm not saying that everybody's a criminal. Coming from a Hispanic background myself, a lot of my family came in, got their citizenship, great people. I have also apprehended some people that are here to find a better way of life. But I have apprehended way too many people that are not here for the better way of life, of just getting away from something that's happening in their country. Either they're part of a gang or part of the cartels. Different cartel factions have been coming through Laredo. Laredo is a big hub. It's called La Plaza. They've been finding the plaza for the past couple of years. Reason being, Laredo is one of the biggest land imports in the U.S.
I think last year it was number one, right, for land crossing. Yeah.
And we also have IH-35. IH-35, once you hit IH-35, you're pretty much open country. I mean, once you get past the checkpoints, you go anywhere in the U.S.
What's the hardest struggle that you got from a law enforcement perspective locally?
Manpower.
Yeah.
Just in my office alone, we're up to 6 investigators. Back then, it used to be just 4 of us. We would have to get in touch with some other agencies that would help us out. Other agencies have different policies, pertaining to pursuits and the apprehensions of illegals or any illegal traffic that happens out in the brush. It was basically 2 departments along with a couple game wardens and DPS that would help us out. And if we didn't average 30 to 40 apprehensions a day, it was a slow day. And you're talking about a 5-hour span.
And now 30 to 40 apprehensions a day. How many are getting away?
Rumor was, and I say rumor because I couldn't confirm it. After they would hit 100 gotaways, that number would go back to 0.
Really?
So the number would go back to 0. So they, at the end of the day, at the end of the shift, hey, we only got 26 gotaways. Yeah, but what about those other 200 and some that got away, from the previous shifts?
Right.
You're talking about 24-hour span.
Now, one of the things that you mentioned was that there was the cartels actually recruit young people on the Texas side to get them involved in the gangs, and that presented a problem to other young people where that was, I don't want to say that's the cool thing, but there was this gang respect that started to build. How do you deal with that? And am I explaining it correctly?
No, you are. It's you hit it right on the nail, because my office does deal with all the juvenile prosecutions. We were one of the first offices in Texas to prosecute a juvenile for murder on a juvenile smuggling case. This what jump started the Webb County Initiative. From there, started steamrolling to us helping out every federal agency on juvenile prosecutions. Federal agencies cannot take, the feds cannot take a juvenile for prosecution. If they do, it's very seldom and rare, but we would take them on the state side. We would pick up the juvenile, charge them with smuggling of persons, depending on how many people we had. It would be from anything from 12 to 14. I think the max I had on a case was a group of 16-year-olds that were working for a cartel and tractor-trailer with about 72 bodies inside, 72 migrants. And you were talking everything from Guatemalans, people from Veracruz, people from Mexico, what we call OTMs, other than Mexico, other Mexican exotics, people from overseas, from Middle East, Czechoslovakians, Russians. It was, anything you could name, we've caught it before.
Yeah.
And it's sad to say that, I know Laredo PD does work very well. They have a big force, but they are not that they're getting their hands tied, but they have a lot of work to do.
Yeah.
Also,
tell me, Joe, quick, you told us a story and you took us to the spot where there was actually an exchange with someone on the Mexican side, one of the cartels. What happened? Because you were going after a perp, somebody who was wanted for serious crimes back in Miami, and you got him to the border and he ran across the other way. What happened?
We had Mexican military sitting on the opposite, Mexican military sitting on the other side of the border. They apprehend him. They asked us what we need him for. We're like, hey, he's got a warrant for us. And the exchange was done in the middle of the river. And that was one of the few times that I've seen that there is good law enforcement in Mexico. It's just seldom and rare for you to find somebody that's good over there. I know the Marina, which is the Mexican Marines, a study was done a couple years back that they were 80% uncorruptible. So that's why they chose them to hit the borders, hit all the border towns. But problems have been stemming from all the way from California down to here with us, down to Bronzeville, Laredo. It's just a massive thing that's happening. You saw that we have no border wall, we have no buoys, we have no concertina wire, we have nothing. I showed you a spot where it was about stone's throw away. It was about 10 feet wide and about 6 inches deep. Anybody could walk through there.
What's the number one thing you'd like to see done in terms of public policy from a political standpoint?
For them to realize what's going on. I want them to actually come and see what the border is, what's happening in the border. Because it's not only what we find here. If we don't catch something, that's going to go to your towns everywhere. That's going to go to towns that, you have a lot of officers that don't know how to speak Spanish. You have non-Spanish speaking officers in different places of the country, different states. What's going to happen when you get somebody from Guatemala, you don't understand their Spanish? What's going to happen if you get somebody, did a crime? These people come from different countries, and I'm not bashing on them. I'm not, putting them down. It's just sometimes they're used to a different way of life, and they're bringing that way of life to America. That's where I see it as a major problem.
Joe, thank you for what you do every day. You're putting your life on the line for the rest of us. As someone explained to us when we met before the tour, that Texas is just a speed bump, but this is a 50-state problem. You are on the front line every day, and you deserve a lot more support from the folks in Washington and some of these other state capitals. So thank you. Hopefully we'll see you again soon on the border, and hopefully help is on the way. Thank you, Joe.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate you.
All right, guys, I want to take a quick break to hear from our sponsors. Then on the other side, you're going to hear from one of our leaders in New Jersey who's also on the front lines. But first, a word from one of our sponsors, Elect Common Sense.
Hi, it's Bill Spadea here. Like you, I am sick and tired of the culture of acceptance that has been beaten into us by Trenton politicians on both sides of the aisle. Accepting their higher taxes, accepting higher tolls, crumbling roads, accepting a radical school curriculum, accepting busloads of illegal border crossers, accepting prisoners being let out before they complete their sentences, and perhaps worst of all, accepting losing November after November. It is time to break the mentality of acceptance being pushed by Trenton politicians. We need to demand common sense policies and leaders who get it. I am excited to announce the launch of Elect Common Sense and to serve as its honorary chairman. It is time to get back to winning.
Guys, welcome back to Common Ground. Now, hopefully, John Tsoukaris, we see a little buffering note there. John, can you hear me? All right, I don't hear John. John is with enforcement and removal operations in Newark. And one of the things that we are going to talk to him about once we solve this technical problem is that he is running the operation in Newark. And I've said this over and over again. One of the important things that we need to do in New Jersey, and as you know, we've got our 10-point plan where you can find that at Elect Common Sense. You can find it at billspadea.com. The bottom line is this, that we do not have the will in New Jersey under this current government to enforce the rules and the laws that need enforcement to protect our communities. Number one, first and foremost, when it comes to the enforcement and removal operations and from ICE, Immigration Customs, we have to enforce federal detainer orders. So just to put it in plain speak, a federal judge will issue an order to detain a certain migrant because they have been accused of or charged with a serious crime. Could be something, a home break-in, a car theft, could be as serious as child rape, murder. I mean, bad stuff. But New Jersey does not enforce those detainer orders. We've actually had situations where Governor Murphy has taken a step back, and we have law enforcement locally that are not allowed to intervene. So you've got guys that are grabbed locally and then let go before immigrations and customs enforcements can get to them. So when you think about that, how serious that is, and then you add to it bail reform, and I've said this over and over again, the challenge we have with bail reform is that it's a point system. 82% of the perps that are picked up are released that day under this bail reform system. Now, when you think of that, that's a disaster. It means we're only holding 18%, but let's go a step further. You are an illegal immigrant coming through a cartel trafficked entry point on the southern border. You get here, you have no ID, you have no record, there's no sharing of information with the country that you came from. So according to our bail reform system, you've got no points, release right back out into the community. And when you think about how dangerous that is from a public safety perspective, from a safety perspective regarding our law enforcement officers, completely out of control, but it gets even worse. Not only have we set up the magnet for people to come, but you have weak Republicans, guys like the last Republican nominee for governor, Jack Ciattarelli. He supported giving driver's licenses to illegals. Now, we now know that over a 6-week period coming across through Hidalgo County, Texas, in South Texas, in the McAllen area, out of 2,000 immigrants, illegal immigrants coming over daily, 7 out of 10 were Chinese military-aged men. Give a license to them. How about the Hezbollah terrorists? Well, the problem is you can't differentiate. So anybody advocating for licenses for illegals is complicit in the problem that is empowering the cartels. Then on the other side, you got John Bramnick, state senator. His law firm profits off of fighting deportation to keep illegals here. Again, you think they're worrying about whether or not there is a criminal background? How would they even know? This is the challenge. This is why. All right, I'm gonna go to John Tsoukaris now. John, can you hear me? There we are, John. Can you hear me? John Tsoukaris is with Enforcement and Removal Operations, works with our ICE headquarters in Newark, New Jersey. John Tsoukaris, can you hear me? He can't. All right, guys, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to wrap up because I want to hear from our sponsors. I'm going to do a special episode at some point over the next couple of days. We will get John on the radio so you can hear him live at NJ1015.com. I want to thank Action Networks. I want to thank Elect Common Sense. I want to thank all the people that helped put this program together. As you can see from what you've just heard, and even though we didn't get to the New Jersey specific person on the ground in law enforcement, you understand what the crisis is. We have to turn off the sanctuary state. We have to get rid of bail reform. We have to enforce federal detainer orders. We have to implement some of the policies that have been implemented successfully by other states. We should not be recognizing driver's licenses issued to illegals by other states. Absolutely not. We should not be issuing driver's licenses to illegals. We should be opening up our county lockups, our county jails to hold ICE detainers. Why? Because A, we can create government revenue coming from the federal government into our counties. That's positive cash flow. But B, you're getting these guys off the streets. Guys, thank you for joining me. Again, I want to thank Action Networks. Go to ACTEON. Action Networks, they're the guys that have helped us when we had a security issue at my home. Our home is now protected by 24/7 video surveillance, way more affordable than you might think. Get your free security assessment at action.net. Denny, Chris, the whole team, they're fantastic. They're friends of mine. You tell them I sent you. Go to action.net, ACTEON. Action Networks is the official sponsor of not only Common Ground, but also my show on New Jersey 101.5, and they are our official security team. So thank you guys for joining me on Common Ground. I appreciate all of you. We will be back. If you want to follow us on our social media, you can take a look right here. All of my social media, go to BillSpadea.com. We're at Bill Spadea, at Bill Spadea Official, and BillSpadea.com is where you're going to find all of our policy points when it comes to protecting New Jersey and America from this terror and criminal threat coming across our southern border. 7.2 million illegal crossings since Joe Biden became president. Build the wall, shut down the border. Let's put America first. It's time that our policymakers speak for America and Americans. I'll see you next time.